We're going to do some laser engraving on one of these. This is an Acacia cutting board. Picked it up from Marshall's, a whole $12.99, and I'm going to use my xTools CO2 laser. This is the P2S CO2 55 watt laser, and we're going to engrave this cutting board. Before I start working on the design that I'm going to put on this board, the very first thing I'm going to do is measure out my board. I want to make sure the dimensions of the board, both width and height, as well as the thickness. Now, what I have read, I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but I have read that you're okay up to about 1 inch thickness on the slats that come on this xTools P2S, but I went ahead and I could eyeball this and see that it wasn't more than 1 inch anyway, but I did get my calipers out and make sure that it was not over 1 inch, and it was not, so I did not have to remove the slats. So I'm going to show you what I did to set this up, set my laser up, set my software up to get a successful engraving on this acacia wood cutting board on my very first attempt. Start off in Adobe Illustrator. This is the software that I use to set up all of my vectors that I'll be bringing over to the laser for cutting, engraving, and that type of stuff. I already have my workspace set up. First thing I'm going to do here is start off with a square. This happens to be 10 and a half inches wide. That is the width of my cutting board. And this will be really important on the next step whenever I export and then bring this into the creative space. This is what I need to make sure that all of my text is lined up and centered where I want it. So I'm going to do all of that planning in the Adobe software, and then we'll make it so much easier when I bring it into my xTools creative space. So I start off with this square rectangle. It doesn't matter. Like I said, the most important thing here is the width, the 10 and a half that I needed. So I centered that on my workspace. Then I figured out how big I want my text to be. So I typed all my text out, turned it into vectors so it's ready to engrave or cut. And then this is all I'm going to be doing for my engraving. So I'm ready to export it to the SVG file and bring that right over to the xTools creative space. So this is where I'm heading next, and we'll get this all set up with my board already on the laser and get ready to start my engraving. Now that I've imported my SVG that I saved, you'll see why I did that square on my Adobe Illustrator. The width, this is the 10 and a half square that I started with. This makes it pretty easy to make sure that my board is lined up. So I have what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to ungroup, and I will go ahead and just make this something that's easy for me to read, and then you can see where this is. Once these two are together, I'll regroup it just for example purposes. If it came in like this, that's not a problem. As long as they're grouped together, all I do is move this over till I get it where it lines up with both sides of the view for my board, and then I can ungroup. Now that I've ungrouped it, I can go ahead and I can click on my text and I can move it to wherever I want. You can see that it does give me lines, so to make sure that I have it in that center where I'm wanting it, and this is where I had it originally. So I can move it up and down however I need it to be. and then by doing it with this outer line that I put in, it makes sure that I'm going to be lined up. So I can delete it. I don't need it now after this. Once I make sure that I have everything centered, I can delete that. And then I have my engraving setting, and then I'll just go in and change my settings. I'm gonna look at the video that I did because right offhand I cannot remember what I used. So now that we have the engraving setting, we're ready to process. And it'll show me exactly this way. This is one last way to check to make sure that you have deleted anything that you don't need. And then I would go to start. So the computer aspect and creative tools and creative space, this is about all there is to it. And now let's take this over to the laser. And this is my final results for my very first attempt at engraving on an acacia wood cutting board, and I am quite happy with the way it turned out. You can see how nicely this engraved. The only thing I will say, and this is something with the acacia wood that I'm already aware of, is when you get to the lighter parts of the grain, sometimes it is a little difficult to get to be able to see some of that, but I think this engraved at a good depth, perfect depth for me, and I am very, very happy with this one.